Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's Romeo here, and in this video, I want to discuss dreaming Spanish. Specifically, I want to talk about how dreaming Spanish is unnecessarily deceptive in their marketing. And the problem that I have with that is that as a fellow language learner, especially when you are starting, there's always this question of like where to start and how to start and what you should do. And there's a lot of people who take Dreaming Spanish narrative at face value and they just go with it. So essentially, what Dreaming Spanish does is they're saying that what you need to do to learn a language is just only watch videos. And then they back it up using their method, right? So if you go on their website, they say that their method was developed from decades of research by Dr. Stephen Krashen. They're saying that Dr. Krashen essentially did decades of research to back up their idea that all you have to do is watch TV. Um, but that's not true. We'll get into it in a little bit. But essentially, Dreaming Spanish says, their owner says that don't do any grammar, just watch a bunch of TV, specifically their YouTube videos, start at their level, and then eventually you will start speaking fluently. They have this little chart here that says that they show again on their page, and they explain their method. And they say, okay, well, if you watch Dreaming Spanish for this long, eventually after 50 hours, you will be able to understand a person that says that stays within a certain concept or whatever. But anyway, let's go back to this idea that they said that it was backed by Stephen Krashen, and essentially Stephen Krashen says don't use grammar. Well, if you do any bit of research on what Stephen Krashen actually says, you can go into this video here, and he specifically talks about his stance on grammar.
Let me set the record straight. People say, Krashen says, never teach grammar. Krashen says, teaching grammar is wrong. It is evil. Teach grammar, go to jail. No, this is not my position. My position says it's hard to teach grammar. It's not easy.
So let's go ahead and stop there. That's him. That's within the last 3 years. Stephen Krashen doesn't say don't teach grammar or don't even look at grammar. And in fact, what Stephen Krashen actually spends the majority of his time telling folks is to read, right? The power of reading. And then if you go into his interviews, he talks a lot about just you should read, and that is the primary means of acquiring input. At least that's the way he said it for a long time. Now, again, this is just his opinion because, again, he's just a researcher or a scientist, and there's nothing that definitively says that he is right or wrong. But to Dreaming Spanish's credit, he does talk about video in this video here. This was about 5 years ago.
So that was kind of all the topics that I wanted to cover. Any other messages you want to give the audience?
Self-selected pleasure reading, yes. And self-selected pleasure TV shows, films, all that stuff, and it'll be over. We'll have solved the problem of language acquisition.
All right, so there you go. Stephen Krashen talks about self-selected reading, and then he talks about the idea of video. But that doesn't mean that he backed Dreaming Spanish's ideas to say that all you have to do just watch television, and then you will naturally acquire the language. But that said, let's talk about what it means to like naturally acquire the language. Essentially, they're saying, okay, well, because we acquired the language naturally, we came into this world, we didn't know the language, and then at some point we started speaking the language. Like that's why we should watch a bunch of TV. Here's the problem with that idea. Let's start with the stages of speech. I did a quick search of the stages of speech development in babies. And if you look at this quick research, it says Um, this is again this AI. I'll point to another study that I'll link in the description. But if you really think about what it means to acquire language as a human, like think about think about it, what that means. Like we are not babies. We are adults. And we know things, and I don't want to be labeled a baby. All right. So therefore I don't want to naturally learn as a baby. But let's talk about it. So um naturally learning the language. At the 10 to 12 month point of being in this world naturally, remember, a baby can't even speak. At 1 year, they may start saying words like mama and dada. At 2 years old, yeah, they now have some words, but if you ever interacted with a baby at 2 years old, like they still can't speak. And then eventually, like at 3 to 4 years old, they start saying a little bit more words, or they have a little bit more words, but they still can't really speak. So essentially, what Dreaming Spanish is saying is like, hey, acquire this language naturally by watching their videos for 3 or 4 years before you do anything else. But to be fair, they do talk about reading at some point. They say, okay, well, once you reach 600 hours of Dreaming Spanish, then you can optionally read. Like if you put 600 hours into context, let's bring up this calculator. 600 hours. Let's say you only have, I don't know, 1 hour a day to read or to watch Dreaming Spanish. So that's 600 hours. 600. Oh, what am I doing? 600 hours, 1 hour a day. That's 600 days. So 600 days divided by 365 days in a year. That's a little over a year and a half if you can only watch Dreaming Spanish for an hour a day. Like that's a year and a half to get to the point where you can finally optionally read. But here's what's interesting about that. First of all, here's the study. I'll link this in the description of this video. Here's the study that actually talks about how young children learn to speak over time. All right. But more importantly, and actually more to the point, is this video here that talks about the stages of language development in children. And my whole point of sharing this is that we are not children. All right. At 6 months, they respond to their own name. Like imagine trying to watch 6 months of videos before you can only respond to your name. And then at 1 year, response to simple spoken requests. Like seriously, do you really want to study for 1 year before you can respond to a request? And then at 2 years, follow simple instructions. 2 years of watching videos before you can follow simple instructions. And then this is one was pretty interesting. Again, this is a 3-year-old. So at 3 years, they can name most familiar things. So essentially, this is what Dreamer in Spanish is saying that you're going to do after 3 years of only watching TV.
Jimmy, take a big
They can name most familiar things. They have names for a lot of things.
What is this?
A phone.
Very good. What is this?
A block.
What is this?
A crayon.
What is this?
A book.
So great. After 3 years of watching TV and not watching any books or not reading any books because they're optional and you didn't study grammar, after 3 years of watching videos, they're essentially saying this is where you will be if you are learning naturally like a 3-year-old. Again, I'm not a 3-year-old, you're not a 3-year-old, so this idea may sound like it makes sense, but if you really think about it, the idea of only watching TV to acquire a language does not make sense. You still can't compare the input that a child receives naturally over 3 years to the input that you can possibly receive from watching videos on Dreaming Spanish. Like, it's not even comparable. If you think about it, over 3 years, let's say that the child is 3 years is 24 hours in one day. Let's take 8 hours from that child. So let's say the child is awake 16 hours a day, over 365 days times 3 years. That's about 17,520 hours of input. Hearing the English language spoken, actually being challenged to use the word, having immediate feedback when the word is incorrectly, being when the word is being used correctly, being corrected every time, actually being shown every waking moment of their day. When they say things incorrectly, their parents, or even when they say things correctly, you always have the parents saying, yeah, you're right, you want this. Oh yeah, you want to eat this. And then not even like dealing, like you can't even compare the frustration that a child has, which is why a child cries. It's like when they want to communicate something, like they are forced to use the language naturally over 17,520 hours. You can't compare even your best day. Let's say that you can watch 5 hours of Dreaming Spanish per day over 3 years. That's 5 hours times 365 days times 3 years. That's only 5,000. Let me see what the math is on that. That's only 5,475 hours. Is no comparison. And we're saying that over 3 years, you're going to sound like that 3-year-old. Like, do you really want that? So there has to be a better way. And that's why I call the Dreaming Spanish method like deceptive. It's not a comparison. You can't compare yourself to the way we naturally acquire a language with all the feedback that we have. Like, watching TV is only a passive process, period. The idea of getting comprehensible input can be done two ways. Comprehensible input could be acquired watching videos, so that is true, but it can also be acquired by taking in symbols. And they even say it on their page. It says it here. Right here, watching and reading itself results in acquisition. All right. So you can actually acquire input by reading. So on their own page, they kind of debunk the idea that you should just only watch television. All right. So reading is kind of like what grammar is, right? This whole idea you shouldn't study grammar. It's not that you shouldn't study grammar. My opinion is you're just not studying the right grammar or the right books. Any book that teaches grammar, if it's worth its ability to teach you, is going to have more than just grammar. And that's why I like the book Complete Spanish Step by Step. Not only does it teach the grammar, but as you're reading it and you're saying those sentences over and over again, like you are receiving input. That's also why I recommend Destinos. Like, not only are you watching a telenovela series, you're watching the same things take place over 52 episodes or over a bunch of hours, as opposed to like watching one video of Dreaming Spanish that is about one subject, and then you skip to watching another video that's about another subject. It's like, where is the repetition in that? There's no repetition in that. So anyway, I don't want to spend much more time on that, but I just had a problem with it because as a fellow language learner, it's already hard enough to find the right place to start. And if you start there and you watch 1,000 hours of Dreaming Spanish and never touch anything else, I guarantee, okay, maybe I can't guarantee it, but I'm pretty sure that you'll be disappointed when you try to speak after 1,000 hours of watching videos. Meanwhile, what I recommend is a process where you're actually taking in reading, studying grammar, watching Destinos, speaking out loud, and doing all of that over 365 days, and you will be much more ahead of where you will ever be if you're only watching Dreaming Spanish. Again, it's not to say that you shouldn't use it. It's a great resource if you like entertaining videos and that's what you want to do. But don't kid yourself. You're not going to become fluent by just watching videos on Dreaming Spanish. And I think they do a disservice by spreading this message when they don't need to. They need to just say what they are, which is a great resource for watching Spanish videos and entertaining yourself when you have the time. Anyway, that's all I wanted to share in this video. I hope it helps. I'll link these sources in the description below. And until the next video, thanks for watching.